Okay. Last thing here, you guys know we gotta watch a video. Supposedly, Bellular believes the new Evoker spec has been leaked. So let's see what he has to say about it, and then we're getting straight into our Razageth polls.
I think you'll be surprised how deep this one goes. So, let's get started.
That's what I told her. That's what I told her. I'm just saying.
Since their announcement, people hoped the new dragon race, the new class about being a dragon, would be able to tank. Turns out they couldn't. They had two specs.
Tanking
and despite
spec.
10.1's plot being about discovering the legacy of the Black Dragons, who are, you know, the big, earthy boys who just scream tank, they probably won't pick up a sword and shield and jump into the fray. In a way, you could say that would suck, but there's a silver lining, and that is the role that Blizzard have been about as subtle as a thrown brick about. It's actually quite a lot more interesting.
18,
it's something
come on,
that World of Warcraft has not had before. It's a support spec. The bit you might be surprised about is there is a literal narrative to this now. Okay, I'll get started. So, there is new evidence that Blizzard didn't even bother trying to hide that comes from the 10.1 PTR. Neltharion has some crazy datamine voice lines about his Drakthir, and here they are.
You three shall be the examples all Drakthir will follow. Sarkareth, my devastator, you shall rend your foes with the powers of the red and blue dragonflights. Viridia, my preserver, you shall heal our allies with the grace of green and bronze dragonflights.
Yeah, those are the two specs we currently have. Those are the, you know, the healing and the DPS spec.
I mean, come on, guys. He literally called out the two specs by name.
Yeah.
Sarkareth, the Devastator, Viridia, the Preserver. One's violent to a fault, the other one is caring to a fault, and they are our two in-game specs. But he actually says 3.
And Emberthal, you will wield the essence of the Black Dragonflight to augment all those around you with my power.
Yeah, Emberthal, an augmenter. Or
we're getting
in
a
terms
bard
of
spec or
specs
something?
in a game,
Just a buffing
the
spec?
Augmentation Evoker. That's new, but it's also kind of not, because Blizzard have been building this since pre-patch. That essence of the Black Dragonflight, that is something that we've seen a lot of in 10.07's lore books. It was related to Adamanthia, the this black dragon who you find in the Reach, who is basically
the quest
trapped in a tormented stasis for daring to betray Neltharion. She was tasked with extracting the essence from the Drakthir, and was successful, which explains why the class only had a few Black Flight abilities compared to the other 4 flights.
Right, we talked about this. The Black Flight abilities have been removed.
Their creation gave them free will, and all of these, desires to live, to love, to pet animals in Stormwind, which is not particularly useful for a custom-built race of super soldiers. So, Neltharion wanted to fix this problem by removing the essence. And Adamanthia, their mother figure, started to rebel. It's a bit like what if the Jem'Hadar in Deep Space Nine wanted to suddenly go and start a family and write poetry, I guess. Now, here's something that I think we concede that's very crazy. So, Adamanthia, in Greek myth, is a nymph who hid Zeus from his father Cronus, who was the leader of the Titans. Zeus ultimately killed Cronus and overthrew the Titans. In this case, Blizzard are clearly suggesting that Emberthal is a bit like Zeus, child of Cronus who broke free from that terrible legacy. And also, Cronus ate his own children.
Oh, God.
But instead of Zeus, he was given a rock to swallow. Does that sound familiar? it's literally Galacroft. Anyway,
that's
to the talk about a third spec. So Adamanthia and the Black Essence are the key here. The Drakthir in general don't even have their memories of Adamanthia. They only have fragments of her floating around their brains, saying, "It is as if she holds part of us in her, sustained in more than just memory." And in the same series of lore books that you find in the Reach, one of her messages to Neltharion is this: "The extraction of Black Dragonflight essence from the Drakthir has gone smoothly, though I worry it may permanently cripple their abilities."
Right, they have no melee abilities now.
Maybe it may be reversible. But there is more. we have to re-examine some older stuff as well. We can also look at this, the Edict of the Adamant Vigil. This is a book that we really didn't pay too much attention to from the pre-patch of this expansion. It's a bit long, so for brevity,
That's
it
why I won't
explains
read
that
it.
Emberthal's Wyrn was basically like, it was the SAS. It was the SEAL Team 6 of the
These are great
Evokers.
edits.
They had total operational freedom, but their role was very specific. It was to learn enemy weaknesses and amplify allies' strengths. So you see what Blizzard are basically
Right.
saying in all these hints so far?
Is this a tanking
The
class,
Evokers
though? Can you just come
originally
through
came
it?
in 3 flavors, red and blue.
Do we need him to spend 20 minutes right now telling us whether or not this is going to be a taking spec? I just want to know.
To nuke things, green and bronze to be the hospital, and basically the Captain Planet buff bot, which is Emberthal and these
Yeah, but
augmenters.
what is a buff
They're
class going to
clearly
do?
not complete as
what's it
they
gonna
are
fit in?
right now in the game. Without that black Dragonflight essence, they can
support spec?
devastate, they can
Yeah, but
preserve.
is it going to be like a DPS support? It can't be a healing support. They already have that. He already said support. I know, but what? So they're going to have 2 healing specs? Both? This is going to be
they
weird.
cannot augment. So, the question is, where's the essence? Well, in 1007, we find Adamanthia in the Forbidden Reach, trapped in that stasis. We consider freeing her, but Abyssian notices something is up. He senses
Empowers
the essence
damaging
is
abilities
being
for damage
forced
dealers.
into her, keeping her in an agonizing stasis. Now, in
So will they be a
10.1 so
DPS
far,
spec?
we've no signs of this being sorted out, except for one thing. So, do you remember this? Evokers only. Upon login, you are toasted with new specialization remembered toast.
Yeah, I
Right?
remember seeing this.
This was just some stuff that appeared in the data mining. Now, 10.1's PTR has unimplemented quests in an
Think a
Evoker-only
hype man?
storyline that was called
The new
Adamanthia.
spec will be saving Sam from the
They
edge.
open with an in-game
That'd
prompt
be good.
telling you that you have remembered a new
Sam's
spec,
still thinking
and the
inside
actual
box.
quests
I
revolve
mean, there's 3 boxes that every class, every spec goes into, right? It's DPS, healer, or tank, right? There's a 3. There's a 3. I understand support. I mean, I guess you could throw it into a healing box, but are they going to heal? Are we really getting a second healing spec? I mean, it's not unheard of to have multiple specs that fit in the same box. Obviously, there's plenty of classes with more than 1 DPS spec. But there is currently no class in the game with 2 healing specs. He just said it's not a class that has been seen before. But it still has to fit in one of the boxes. Priest? Oh, yeah, true. Priest does have 2 healing specs. You're right. They do have 2 healing specs. But they both fit into the healing one. About to slam my head to a door. Like, slam? What? Okay, fine. Let's see. I'm sorry.
around
Let's
Abyssian
just see what he
wanting
says.
to free Adamanthia, even though he was a little bit worried about it.
It does have to fit in a box.
In 1007. So it's a plotline they literally set
Out
up.
of the box.
The quests now only have notes.
Gonna
They don't have full
I can't wrap my
text,
mind around that.
But they basically say that the most efficient way to beat a boss is to boost/heal Abyssian while he fights. Rather, you may say augment instead of boost.
Sure.
Now, this quest has not been implemented any further, and with the patch being a month out, it is almost certainly not going to be suddenly done. Right? Those characters are busy in 10.1 anyway.
Please, not gonna-
And also, let's be
Sam
honest,
forgot about them.
they're not going to randomly drop a new spec on us, right? They would need to test this for months, especially if it's a support spec, which is
This
something
Weaver type
in a
healer,
way
maybe? Well, that
that's-
would fit him into the healing box, wouldn't it? Here's the thing. If it doesn't fit into one of the 3 boxes, then it's either going to be a waste or it's going to be essential, right? Then you're going to say, well, now every group every 5-man needs to have a DPS, needs to have heals, a tank, and a hype man. Either that or hype men are going to be essentially useless, and then everyone's just going to say, never bring a hype man, you're better off bringing a 3rd DPS. That doesn't make sense. It's going to have to fit into one of the 3. It's just that what the game is built around. It's just an arbitrary thing.
I mean, basically new to WoW entirely.
It's a support class, so it's a tank? No,
so the
I did
chance
not
of
say a support class, so it's a tank. I said so it's a healer.
Augmentation Evoker becoming available
Objection.
in patch
Mischaracterization.
10.1 is 0, in my opinion.
Be
But
right
the
back
chance
on
of
my
it still existing at least as an internal test, a plan that they had or a plan that they still may have, I actually think that is relatively high. I mean, otherwise, why ever write new specialization remembered in a public test realm build? Now, if they aren't going to have these quests be completed in 10.1, then when? Oh, hey Blizzard, what's this you've got lying around? It's the roadmap. There's bits of it that need filled in. The next time we get more story and quests,
They wouldn't
is
heal,
patch
they would have abilities that boost the
10.1.7.
healer's heals.
And this, I think, to be a bit bullish, is their plan. Okay, this is the bit that may seem totally out
rather
there,
gone a
but hey,
tanking
come
spec.
along for the ride. 10.1 is over. We've defeated Sarkarath, we've discovered the secrets of Aberys, a bunch of purple things have happened, we've become friends with the Niffin. Patch 10.1.5 is over. We've killed or disarmed Farak in whatever mega dungeon we end up getting in that patch.
Hope they're
who
not like
knows,
bards
who
in
knows,
D&D.
right? But he's
You
doing
know,
Shadow
useless.
Flame
Well, that's what I'm
stuff,
saying.
whatever.
They're either going to be extremely useful or useless. If you make a support class, you're either going to feel like it's necessary to bring them or it's a waste of time to bring them. There's no in between if that's what they're going to be.
Whenever the mega dungeon happens. So what are
Because
Blizzard
by
going to
bringing
do in
them, you're essentially
10.1.7?
not bringing something else.
They're going to have to set up patch 10.2, right?
I don't know. I don't
Obviously.
know how I feel about this.
That's what they did with the Forbidden Reach. The Forbidden Reach does an excellent job of setting up patch 10.1. It's really awesome to see them do that. But in our
True,
last
for
patch,
PvP, yeah.
they had to do...
It'll be fine for raiding because you're bringing so many people. It's okay to have one less DPS and bring a bard class or support, whatever the hell, buffing class, whatever that's going to be. But for a 5-man Mythic Plus, you only have so many spots. So it's either going to be something you want or something you're going to say, no, it's not worth it.
campaign and two of the best heritage quests in the game, as well as the Bane quest line. Awesome content. Which means, what about these unfinished quests? Will they have time to be finished
I don't know how I feel about this.
and maybe even be a bit more full? The Drakthir are one of the main focuses of Dragonflight.
Right.
They're deeply connected to Maltharion, what he's done. They're not just some quick new, group or quick new class. No, but they are represented by main characters, right? Emberthal is really the character in the spotlight. And it's unfortunate we didn't see as much of her earlier on in Dragonflight, because I know a lot of people have dipped out of the game and haven't came back for 10.07. But seriously, her time in 10.07 with Abyssian was straight up fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah,
10.07's
awesome.
campaign was, albeit short, really terrific, really well done, actually surprisingly good.
It was very good.
So I think it would be pretty insane if Emberthal's arc was not continued through. I mean, just look at the Warbringers and the Harbingers and all of those cinematics that Blizzard did before past expansions like
Don't worry about it,
BFA,
it sounds like
and
you
how
know how
they
to
ended
play
up
more
pretty
than
much
once.
all tying directly into patch content.
I'm not worried about blood DKs. We're going to be viable still. That's the truth. I am just saying, I don't know if I'm going to bring any of these random Evoker buffers in.
And major story beats.
To
Nosdormu and
replace a
Emberthal.
DPS? No.
They
No,
were
thank you.
the featured characters of all of those shorts. Obviously, something's going to happen. So perhaps Emberthal beats Sarkarath with our help, and maybe
if
the
you
help
invite
of,
people for
her
class balance, I
brothers,
do not.
right?
It's true.
Abyssian, Rathian, Sibelian.
I
maybe
invite
she
people to
understands
fill in my
that the
boxes.
Black Dragonflight are not doomed to repeat the sins of their
Two
father,
people in this box.
but they can
4 in this
use,
box.
the same
12 in this
power
box,
for
ready to
more,
go. 14 in this box, ready to go.
Neltharion and Nefarian both experimented to make others stronger, but they did so abusively with a heavy price. What if the good version of that is making other people stronger, right? Imagine the moment where she becomes something more...
It's kind of a puss class, the more I think about it. You buff everybody? That's what you're bringing to the fight? You're a buff? You're a walking buff. That's your claim to fame. Really. So there's a giant battle going on. You got people fighting and dying everywhere, and you're like, don't worry, I'm here. Here's your buff. I'll be...
more than her father.
I don't know,
And by
kinda-
returning the Black
Kind
Dragonflight
of not very big
essence
dick
to the
in my
Drakthir,
opinion.
She can
Multiple
complete
buffs.
them
Yeah.
restore their abilities as augmenters, restore their memories.
Can't track a buff,
maybe
never
will
get
have
kicked.
time
True.
to rework the quests
True.
to give them just more stuff, so you actually unlock the spec and then
Come on,
use it
Tidewell.
in
What's
the quest
exciting
line.
about that? Your buff is
You
here.
fight to free Adamanthia, who is a bit of a mother figure.
give him an
who
instrument.
was
Yeah, they're bards.
basically
They are
punished
bards.
by Deathwing, Nefarian, for doing the right thing. Now, obviously, they would have to announce this spec after patch 10.
Call me
was launched,
McDragon buff.
and they would have to test it on the PTR and do all of that. But imagine how cool it would be as a player to go through that narrative. It would be the first time that a spec would be added into the game in this way, with so much narrative weight behind it. And a pretty perfect time for Blizzard to introduce something that's a bit more out there and kind of have us cheer them on, because that seriously would be an impressive thing to do.
I don't like
But
it.
okay, fun's over. Back to Planet Earth, realism. This would
What
be
if it's a
incredibly
professional-only spec?
hard to get right. I mean, what would an augmenter even do?
And more importantly, how does this affect RP? How does this affect Moonguard? Right? Like everything Blizzard does, they have to consider Moonguard. Are you going to buff the orgies in Elwyn Forest at Lion's Pride Inn? Are you going to buff the orgies? Is that what you are? You're an orgy buffer? Is that what this is all about at this point? That's it? I don't know, man. I don't know how I feel
If you
about
look at
this.
Lost Ark as an example, the support characters don't do much direct damage, but instead they have
fluffer,
to
yeah.
keep their buffs up on allies. So they're basically
If I worked for the
another
Michigan
DPS,
Bar, I'd give
but
Sam's
by
firm a
increasing
call.
other people's DPS. Now, in World of Warcraft, that has existed in past eras with paladins and shamans.
There's a reason I lack knowledge in WoW. It's because all my brain's filled up with all the freaking shit that I had to know for the bar exam.
For Blizzard, it would just be designing gameplay
was it, like,
around this, and that would be quite hard.
5
Though
years
I
ago now?
suppose, imagine if, when looking at unit frames, instead of healing people, you are augmenting people. Maybe they could actually see some form of gameplay there. And maybe we could have a system worked out with Warcraft logs such that, the damage granted is funneled back to them, and we don't have loads of people
yeah.
molding out
This
like
is
we have
stupid.
the PI situation.
This
now,
is
of course, they
stupid.
could also
Better
just be a
call Sam.
DPS with a slightly lower, they do a bit less damage themselves, but they provide a bit more of a buff to other people, and it roughly balances the whole thing out so that they're worth it.
Right,
but
right. So instead of they would be DPS, they would fit into the DPS category essentially if they're just buffing that, right? So you'd bring 2 DPS, but because of that third slot being filled by this buffer fluffer class, your 2 DPS are essentially going to put out what 3 DPS would put out. Okay. All that does is put more dependency on those 2 DPS to be good, because if one of them suck, the party's even more screwed than they would normally be. Am I the only one who thinks this is stupid? I don't know. You guys know I'm not usually a negative person. I don't shit on WoW that much, but I think this is dumb. I don't know.
not absolutely necessary. That's how Final Fantasy XIV
I don't.
does
Yeah.
it.
Okay. Good. JC.
I suppose in a way, some of Discipline Priest is like a little bit like that, because obviously.
Right. We talked about 2 specs for a priest. Discipline priests. Okay. But discipline priests also bring heals. So I guess these guys would have to bring a little bit of DPS.
Disc is like the best healer and does more damage than any other healer. Then it's kind of tricky. So there's minutia to all these things. But I think there could be a way to do that.
If they do it like that, it would buff them
infusion,
equal to
part
4
of your actual
DPS.
rotation.
So that the healer
I
can
don't know,
stop
maybe like the
DPSing,
Demon
I feel.
Hunter
I
and
don't know.
monk debuffs, but you actually have to juggle them.
You
Maybe
know what's
there's
crazy about this whole thing? It would be a big, it would have a big effect on parties, and they haven't even tested this yet. Imagine they just introduced it without testing it oh my god, in beta. This shit break the game.
mini bloodlust that can buff other people, but you'd be rewarded by timing with other people's cooldowns. You can see a lot of opportunity for game there, but it would be complicated. I think it could work. Now the other option would just be to do pure support, but that really does seem insane to get right. It wouldn't enable solo content very well.
Should have just done a tanking class,
Of course,
Blizzard.
a tank who buffs, like that could be
Didn't
a
have to
thing,
make it
but
this
Blizzard
complicated. Should
actually
have made it a
shot that
tanking
one
class.
down.
Black
That's
Dragon
what I should know,
melee
whenever
tanking
Morgan Day
class.
was asked by Towley about a tank spec.
Yeah.
Morgan specifically shot
Tanking
down
spec,
melee
sorry, I
tank,
kept-
but not a third spec in general, which I thought was interesting.
I misspoke there.
Ultimately, then, this would be a major step towards creating Ian Hazzikostas' fabled Game 1. You know, he explained this while talking about Power Infusion, that there are two types of games, right? There's game one, which is the game that they are trying to make, where they can put cool stuff in the game and people get to have fun with the cool stuff, overcoming the game's challenges like raid bosses. And they think the idea that a priest can power infuse one of their allies and maybe time that up with a key part of a fight or their allies, cooldowns, where that's like a really cool part of teamwork.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's happening in a World of Warcraft or even a tabletop RPG, if you're a support class in that, it's a cool player fantasy.
Sure.
But then, of course, there's game two. And that is the one where people min-max like crazy. They try to get rank 1 parses. They try to beat their own parse. They now feel like, oh, if I don't get a PI, then I can't.
The reason we wiped at 0.88%. Parsers. Didn't get out of the lightning circles in time.
Parse with warcraft logs.
Got to finish your rotation.
Now,
right?
he basically said...
Who wants
that
to
they
kill
have
the
to be
boss? Nobody. They just want to
sensitive
finish their
game two,
rotation.
because a lot of people do play like that. But that their
Blizzard never
focus
let people have
is
fun.
making game one the best
True.
it can be. And if the community wants to, they can focus on game two. So, trying out a support spec for the first time, assuming
Tidewell. Yeah, that's
it is
right.
not completely
We'd never
busted,
warlock.
I think would be a great addition to game one. It will be messy for game two, in my opinion. I care a lot more about game one than game two, so that would be good for me. But obviously, I could see how maybe this would not be amazing for everyone. But I think
Just
especially if
for
this was
Power Blaster.
introduced in a way that was blended in with the themes of the expansion, the main characters of the expansion, that does feel like throwing caution to the wind and actually going for it. Blizzard did that with the likes of dragon riding, and that was a massive game-changing win that's going to be carried into the future. So the more that they're willing to just take big bets and do cool shit, I think the happier we'll all be. Okay, with all that said, we should quickly take your hopes down a bit. There's no doubt
My hopes?
any relevant spells from
Already down.
Augmentation Spec. They would have to be ridiculously careful to hide all this stuff because there's probably so much like data and spell types and bits and pieces that people could have sniffed out. And so far, like, they've had some pretty huge hints slip, but it's not like abilities for a spec that isn't in the game yet. It's not like those have been data mined.
Right.
So if it is a secret, it is a well-kept one. The other thing to say is that this would be a massive undertaking, and in a way,
it would.
could threaten to destroy the meta of the game with
100%. If they don't
Blizzard
test this
already
out,
do
this is
struggle
going to
with
break
balance.
shit.
I know, Rat Palace, you guys have been in a bit of a
it's a good
roller
idea 'cause it
coaster the
broke
last
Sam's
little
brain.
while. So it's one of those things, like what happens if having a
What
support
box does this
spec
fit in?
feels mandatory
I still wanna
in
know.
all content, but the game only has one support spec? That could be rough. What if they're so bad that the exciting new spec is never invited to anything?
That's what I'm saying.
So a new spec is...
If you add a support spec, right? A support spec, that's literally all they are. It's either good enough that it's brought, or it sucks and it's not brought. And if it's good enough that it's brought into parties, well, now it's becoming required. And now every single time you would make a 5-man, you got to bring one. Or you're just like, well, that's a wasted spot. I'm not bringing that Bard class in.
an incredible risk in itself.
know, man.
Never mind an entire
know why they're
new
doing
role
this.
within the game. That
Should
being
have been a
said,
tanking
everything
spec.
that I've said about them needing to make high
don't have enough
risk,
tanks in
high
the game,
reward
should have been a
moves
tanking spec.
still stands. I want to see this gutsy, ballsy Blizzard
Even if
that's
they
willing
suck,
to say,
I'll make
all
them
right,
good. I
patch
play mage,
10.1, we're going to completely just redo loot entirely and have a fully deterministic upgrade system. There you go. We're not used
I
to
agree,
that.
Tidewell. They're in
So
Disc
in-
Priests are in every single serious raid comp. But are they in every single serious Mythic Plus comp?
The spirit of this Blizzard that is a lot more willing to actually just try shit out.
I don't mind bringing a
Hope it
support
happens.
class into raid, but what
you?
about a
What
5-man?
kind of augmentation evoker do you want?
Okay, so then every single one of these new Evoker boys are going to have to be brought into a 5-man.
See, so let me know. Thanks for watching.
Especially because these
Thanks
guys
for
are
coming along
supposedly
on
leaning
this
even
wild,
heavier into
speculative ride.
the
I'll
Disc
catch
Priest
you next
fantasy
time.
than Disc Priests are. I don't know, man. Yeah, I thought we'd get a take with Bloodlust. Disc brings more DPS than other healing classes. I don't know. We'll see. Complete and utterly disappointed. Not gonna lie, was hoping for a tanking. Was hoping for tank. Yeah, exactly. You don't know. I guess not.